Hi, Confirmands. Hope you've had a great week. You might remember a few weeks ago we talked about the judges, local heroes and military leaders in Israel. So we're going to be learning more about Old Testament history and what follows the judges. We're going from the judges, who were the leaders of all of the tribes spread out throughout the land of Israel, to a monarchy, a king centered in Jerusalem. And in our books of the Bible that tell us about this time period, the people request a king. But how do we get there? Well, we get there through some important figures. We see Samuel, who is a priest, a judge, and a prophet, who is the one that leads the people from being these separate tribes with separate leaders to having one centralized monarchy. We see it through Saul, who is a military leader who becomes the first king appointed when the people have requested this monarch, and they work with Samuel to get this king. The first king is Saul. But after Saul, it's not one of his descendants or his family members like a monarchy might work. Instead, it is a king named David. Now, David is one of our most famous biblical figures. We hear stories of him from all the times when we're little, through all of our life as we're learning about our faith. David, one of his most famous stories is the story of David and Goliath. This is before he's king, when he defeats a mighty warrior with his intellect and strategy. Now, like I said, David is not one of King Saul's sons. Instead, he is appointed king through God's desire, through Samuel, helping them through this transition. But essentially, Saul is rejected as king, and David becomes the king after him. Now, David has a long reign, and it has many, many ups and downs. And we hear the stories of Samuel, of Saul, of David, and the kings to follow in the books of the Bible, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and some of the books written by our prophets, recorded about our prophets and their going to the people on behalf of God. Now, Israel said, we want a king. A lot of the nations around them had a king, and they could have been happy just being God's people and living in that covenant relationship. But they saw what others had, thought that it worked out okay. But here's the thing. Kings aren't perfect, and so the rule in Israel isn't perfect. David, even though he's a great king, will do bad things, and we'll see the same in other kings too. Now here's the kind of start to the story of our kings in Israel. I'm going to read for you 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 1 to 9. When Samuel became old, he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn son was Joel, and the name of his second son was Abijah, and they were judges in Beersheba. Yet his sons did not follow in his ways and turned aside after gain. They took bribes and perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, you are old, and your sons do not follow in your ways. Appoint for us then a king to govern us, like other nations. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to govern us. Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, listen to the voice of your people and all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them. Just as they have done to me, from that day I brought them up out of Egypt to this day, forsaking me and serving other gods. So also they are doing now, and doing to you. Now then, listen to their voice only. You shall solemnly warn them and show them the ways of the king who shall reign over them. And so God is instructing Samuel that this kingship, this monarchy, won't be perfect. Though there are some moments that do work out for Israel, and we learn about these again in all of those books of the Bible centered around this time period with a king in Jerusalem. And so there are goods and bads to having this responsibility of being the monarch, of being a king or a queen. And so I want you to think, what are some good things that you could do as a monarch if you were the king or the queen? And so that's our challenge for this week. If you were a monarch, tell me 3 of your goals. Now, it might be a little bit tempting to say, oh, what could I do with all of the power and money that comes with being a monarch? And you could say what you'd like to do with that. Or you could think of the needs of a people, of a nation, and tell me what 3 of your goals would be as a monarch. Or it could be probably a mix of both. But if you are the monarch, what are 3 of your goals? Thanks so much for being with me today, for going over some of this history we have in our Old Testament. God is listening to the people's request and working through people like Samuel and the kings to show them that God is going through all of this with them. And remember, as we are learning about our relationship with God, one of the ways that we can know we are in relationship with God and practice our relationship with God is through prayer. So take some time on your own or with your family to say your prayers, hopefully each and every day. Take care and have a great week. We'll see you again soon.